Around 1050 CE, this place burst into life. It became a teeming, thriving city of perhaps 15,000 inhabitants. Some estimate even higher.
Throughout history, mighty empires have risen from nothing to dominate vast regions, building magnificent cities, creating advanced technologies, and influencing millions of lives. Yet some of these great civilizations simply vanished, leaving behind only mysterious ruins and unanswered questions. Their sudden disappearances continue to puzzle archaeologists and historians today, challenging everything we thought we knew about the rise and fall of human societies.
For the tourists, before colonial flags, and even before maps bothered to label the scattered outposts in the Atlantic, there were the Guanches, the original inhabitants of the Canary Islands. Mysterious, isolated, and resilient, they lived on those rugged volcanic rocks for over 1,000 years, only to vanish in what seemed like a blink of history.
Imagine a civilization that had better city planning in 3000 BCE than most European cities in the 18th century. The Indus Valley civilization, also known as the Harappan civilization, was one of 3 early civilizations of the ancient world, alongside Egypt and Mesopotamia. Yet it was the most widespread, spanning much of Pakistan, northwestern India, and northeast Afghanistan. What made this civilization extraordinary? The cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa featured sophisticated urban planning with grid-patterned streets, advanced drainage systems, public wells, and even indoor toilets. The population of over 5 million people lived in standardized brick houses, used uniform weights and measures for trade, and developed their own undeciphered script. But here's what makes their story so haunting. Around 1900 BCE, this advanced civilization began to decline, and by 1300 BCE, it had completely vanished. The great cities were abandoned, their sophisticated infrastructure fell into ruin, and their writing system was lost forever. Recent research has finally shed light on this ancient mystery. Scientists discovered that the Indus Valley experienced 3 major drought periods between 4,200 and 3,900 years ago, each lasting 25 to 90 years. As Cameron Petrie of the University of Cambridge noted, we find convincing evidence that this time was not a short-term crisis, but a continuous transformation of the natural conditions under which Indus people lived. The drought affected both summer and winter rainfall, devastating agricultural productivity and forcing people to abandon their great cities. Archaeological evidence shows that as water became scarce, people migrated eastward to the Himalayan foothills, where they established smaller farming villages. However, even these eventually failed when the winter monsoons that had brought reliable rainfall also dried up. The Indus Valley civilization didn't disappear overnight. It was a gradual transformation over centuries, but one that ultimately erased one of humanity's most sophisticated early societies. The Maya built one of the most advanced civilizations in the Americas, with towering pyramids, sophisticated writing systems, and astronomical knowledge that rivaled any culture of their time. At their peak, during the Classic period from 250 to 900 CE, Maya cities housed millions of people across what is now Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan were bustling centers of trade, art, and learning. The Maya developed the concept of zero in mathematics, created accurate calendars, and could predict solar eclipses with remarkable precision. Their civilization seemed unstoppable. Then something catastrophic happened. Around 900 CE, the Maya began abandoning their great cities, not all at once, but like falling dominoes across the southern lowlands. By the end of the Classic period, cities that had thrived for centuries were empty, their grand temples and palaces left to be reclaimed by the jungle. What caused this dramatic collapse? Recent research points to a perfect storm of disasters. Severe droughts lasting decades made agriculture nearly impossible in a region where people depended on seasonal rainfall. Studies of lake sediments and cave formations reveal that rainfall dropped by 25 to 40% during the terminal Classic period. But drought alone wasn't the only culprit. Archaeological evidence shows increased warfare between city-states, with defensive walls and palisades constructed around many urban centers. Political instability followed as rulers lost the ability to provide for their people. Overpopulation had strained resources, and when the rains failed, the complex Maya political system collapsed. The collapse wasn't uniform. While southern cities were abandoned, northern Maya cities like Chichen Itza continued to flourish. The Maya people never truly disappeared. They adapted, migrated, and survived. Today, over 7 million people speak Mayan languages in the region, but the golden age of the classic Maya, with its magnificent cities and cultural achievements, vanished into the jungle forever. Near present-day St. Louis, Illinois, stood the largest city in North America before European contact. Cahokia was the crown jewel of the Mississippian culture, a sprawling metropolis that, at its peak, around 1100 CE, housed between 15,000 and 20,000 people, more than London or Paris at the time. The city was a marvel of urban planning. At its center rose Monk's Mound, a massive earthen pyramid that stood 100 feet tall and covered 14 acres at its base. This was the largest prehistoric earthen construction in the Americas north of Mexico. Surrounding it were over 120 earthen mounds, a central plaza covering 40 acres, and organized neighborhoods with houses, workshops, and ceremonial areas. Cahokia was a trading powerhouse connecting communities from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast. Archaeologists have found exotic materials like copper from the Great Lakes, shark teeth from the Gulf Coast, and mica from the Appalachian Mountains. The city's influence spread across much of the Midwestern and southeastern United States. But by 1350 CE, this great city was completely abandoned. What happened to America's first metropolis? The collapse appears to have been gradual, beginning around 1200 CE and continuing for over a century. Recent research has debunked the old theory that environmental destruction caused the collapse. New evidence suggests a complex combination of factors led to Cahokia's abandonment. Climate change brought devastating floods and droughts. An earthquake in the 13th century toppled buildings and disrupted the city's infrastructure. Overpopulation led to unsanitary conditions and disease outbreaks. Evidence suggests social unrest and possibly civil war around 1250 CE. The construction of defensive palisades indicates external threats that hadn't existed before. The ruling elite, who had established a hereditary system of control, appear to have lost the faith of the people when they couldn't solve these mounting crises. Unlike other lost civilizations, we know what happened to many of Cahokia's people. They migrated to other parts of the Mississippi River Valley, where they were assimilated into other Native American groups. On the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, a Polynesian civilization created one of the world's most enduring mysteries. Rapa Nui, known as Easter Island, was home to a thriving society that carved nearly 1,000 giant stone statues called moai between 1250 and 1500 CE. These weren't just impressive sculptures, they were living faces of deified ancestors, standing as eternal guardians over the island. The largest completed moai weighs 86 tons and stands 33 feet tall. How a civilization with only stone tools managed to quarry, carve, and transport these massive figures across the island has puzzled researchers for generations. The Rapa Nui people were master engineers and navigators. They had sailed across thousands of miles of open ocean to reach this remote island around 700 CE. Once there, they developed a complex society with sophisticated agricultural techniques, a unique writing system called rongo rongo, and the engineering skills to create their monumental statues. But when Europeans first arrived in 1722, they found a drastically different scene. The island's population had dwindled to just 2,000 to 3,000 people, living in what appeared to be a depleted environment. The Great Moai carving era had ended, and many statues lay abandoned along ancient roads. What caused this dramatic transformation? For decades, popular theories suggested an ecocide, that the Rapa Nui people had deforested their island and caused their own collapse through environmental destruction. However, recent research reveals a more complex story. Evidence suggests that crop failures and resource scarcity led to increased competition and warfare between different clans on the island. Archaeological findings show evidence of conflict and possibly even cannibalism during desperate times. Disease outbreaks likely followed European contact, decimating the population further. The true tragedy is that by the time the outside world took notice, much of the Rapa Nui civilization's knowledge had already been lost. Their Rongo-Rongo script remains undeciphered, and the oral traditions that explain the meaning and purpose of the moai had largely disappeared with the people who created them. Looking across these lost civilizations, a disturbing pattern emerges. From the Indus Valley to the Maya, from Cahokia to Easter Island, these societies didn't simply fade away. They collapsed when multiple crises hit simultaneously. Climate change appears as a common thread in many of these collapses. Severe droughts devastated the Indus Valley and Maya civilizations. Floods and climate instability contributed to Cahokia's abandonment. Resource scarcity affected Easter Island's population. These weren't minor environmental shifts. They were prolonged, severe changes that stressed entire civilizations beyond their breaking point. But environmental challenges alone didn't doom these societies. Political instability, warfare, social unrest, and population pressure amplified the effects of climate stress. When ruling elites couldn't solve mounting problems, people lost faith in their leaders, and traditional systems began to break down. What's particularly striking is how quickly some of these collapses occurred. The Maya Classic period ended within a century. Cahokia's decline took about 150 years. The Indus Valley civilization's gradual decline spanned several centuries, but once the final crisis hit, cities were abandoned rapidly. These lost civilizations also teach us about human resilience. The people didn't simply vanish. They adapted, migrated, and found new ways to survive. Maya descendants continue to live throughout Central America. The Indus Valley people likely integrated with other populations. Cahokians joined other Native American communities. The Rapa Nui people endured, and their descendants still live on Easter Island today. Perhaps most importantly, these civilizations remind us that no society, no matter how advanced or powerful, is immune to collapse. They achieved remarkable feats. The Indus Valley's urban planning, the Maya's mathematical and astronomical knowledge, Cahokia's monumental architecture, and Rapa Nui's incredible sculptures. Yet, when faced with the perfect storm of environmental stress, political instability, and social upheaval, even these great civilizations couldn't survive in their original form. The ruins of these lost civilizations serve as both inspiration and warning. They show us the incredible heights human societies can reach, but also how quickly those achievements can disappear. As we face our own environmental and social challenges today, perhaps the greatest lesson from these vanished worlds is this: no civilization is too powerful to fall, but human ingenuity and adaptability ensure that our story continues even when our cities turn to dust.